Who are you? What's your role? And who do you work for?
Hi, I'm Ed Vielmetti. I work at Equinix, where I'm the developer partner manager for open source. We work with a number of open source projects, including members of the CNCF community, to provide infrastructure to help their projects succeed.
What are 3 Kubernetes emerging tools that you are keeping an eye on?
I'm keeping an eye on about 100 of them at the moment. But if you had to pick, I would pick innovation at the operating system level, where it's the level between Kubernetes and the bare metal. So Flatcar Linux is something that we work with closely. Operating system distribution focused on providing infrastructure that lets you run a Kubernetes cluster successfully. Talos Linux is another one, very innovative Linux distribution, very minimalist in terms of what it provides, just a minimum amount of what you would need to get Kubernetes running and successfully support the hardware that you need. And then number 3 is sort of a wild card. I think the biggest challenge that people have for Kubernetes technology is observability, trying to figure out what's going on inside their clusters and how it all works, and if something is going wrong, how to deal with it. So I'm really interested in the whole observability, the OTel space, and all the tooling up and down the line, from visualizing all that to inserting. We are supporting a project called OTel CLI for putting observability into your shell scripts. So like soup to nuts, all of that stuff.
One of our guests, Matthias, suggests that the best way to learn Kubernetes is by doing and getting your hands dirty. Then he went on and built his own bare metal Kubernetes cluster in his spare time. What's your strategy to learn Kubernetes tools and features?
So I think one of the things that is really hard to learn about Kubernetes at scale is what's going to fail if you don't design things right. So my favorite experience with Kubernetes learning to date has been running a Kubernetes install on a much too small, much too slow machine with a really awful storage on it, and discovering what can go wrong with etcd when your storage is way too slow, and error messages that most people with reasonable installations would never see. And I think there's a tradition in this world of having a home lab of some sort. It doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be fancy, but having a system where you can build it and break it and fix it and break it and fix it over and over again is a really helpful thing. And if you don't have that, then having some sort of access to cloud resources is of course, I'm going to say that because of where I work, but just to be truthful, having something that you can just do at home and test things out on tiny, underpowered, unreasonable equipment and make some sense of what goes on when things go wrong.
Matthias also believes that on-premise deployments require proper education and attention, especially regarding managing on-prem architecture versus cloud architecture. After spending a few months building an on-prem Kubernetes cluster, he shared this advice. What's your experience with bare metal clusters, and how does that differ from using Kubernetes in the cloud? What would you have liked to know before starting Kubernetes on bare metal?
Kubernetes on bare metal at Equinix is kind of a hybrid, where we have bare metal resources that you can have. There's no hypervisor, there's no shared tenancy, you have the whole thing, but there's a little bit of an API to help you out, to help you provision things and whatnot. I think the hardest thing to understand about bare metal is the layers below the operating system, the control plane of the hardware itself rather than of the data that you're working on. And again, I think the home lab is the solution to that, to be able to have some of the resources that you need to break things. Also, at the bare metal level, you're almost always running some sort of operating system on top of the bare metal that's not Kubernetes. So you need to have some kind of understanding of the range of choices that you have for that. It's probably not going to look like just the operating systems you're used to for desktop use. And exploring that space is really interesting.
Kubernetes is turning 10 years old this year. What should we expect in the next 10 years to come?
The next 10 years, I think there's going to see a couple of innovations. One, people are going to figure out how to, 10 years, gosh, that's a long time. People are going to find things that solve the problem that Kubernetes solve that is going to be easier to understand. Whether it's still going to be called Kubernetes or not, it's hard to know, but people are doing platforms these days where there's Kubernetes underneath, but it's well hidden from the user, and all they see is a container runtime, and they don't know about scheduling, and they don't care about pods, and stuff gets hidden from them, yet there's a Kubernetes layer underneath. I think it's likely in 10 years, if you're looking that far forward, that there will be a complete rewrite of some components. People are just going to start over again and say, all right, we did etcd once, can we do etcd again? Start over from scratch. Maybe not that project, but something else like that, or some other key component where the community won't be just one thing, it'll be a couple of similar things. And then I'm almost wondering whether the complexity of Kubernetes is going to drive people away from Kubernetes, and whether people are going to revert back to simpler times when you had a server and you run processes on it, and systemd is your friend, and maybe that server has 100 cores or 200 cores, but you're managing a single big box rather than a bunch of little devices over a network. And it's hard to say. I mean, part of it's going to depend on the evolution of hardware. If hardware evolves to have a lot more AI chip sort of interfaces to it, innovations from that market will creep into this market, and people will work on it that way. So I know 10 years is a long time.